Jujutsu Kaisen sorcerers are portrayed as Japan's main defenders against cursed spirits. Some would even call them heroes for maintaining peace and order against malicious individuals. And while they operate far from the public eye, they're still susceptible to some figures who wouldn't agree with how they conduct themselves or how much control they have over the Jujutsu world. So in this case, enter the hero hunter Garou, a character who shares many similarities with the sorcerer's killer, banished and bullied for simply harboring different thoughts and having different genetics. So what happens if the hero hunter Garou accepts the offer of hunting Japan's elite sorcerers? Who would he be able to hunt and where does he stop? But before that, make sure to destroy the subscribe button and the notification bell for more of these One Punch Man videos. Thank you. Jujutsu Kaisen has introduced over 55 known sorcerers throughout the series, ranging from students and teachers at Tokyo and Kyoto Jujutsu High to elite members of the Zenin, Kamo, and Gojo clans, as well as participants in the Deadly Calling game. These sorcerers are classified by grade, from grade 4 all the way up to special grade, which is a tier reserved for anomalies with insane curse techniques and immense strength. So in this video, we obviously wouldn't be able to cover every single sorcerer, but instead focus on the most well-known characters, those who has left an impact on the story. But before that, it's very important to understand how strong the overall verse is. You see, I've already covered many videos and basically researched this verse multiple times to try and figure out which meta we should be giving these characters, and you'd be surprised on the many interpretations people have specifically regarding the top tiers of the verse. For instance, some would claim that since Yuki Tsukumo, a special grade sorcerer, narratively inferior to the likes of Gojo, Sukuna, and even Yuta, managed to create a black hole capable of destroying the entire planet, then that can only mean that the others should be capable of performing feats equal or straight up superior to this level. However, Yuki's black hole is a hack's ability. People really need to understand that she didn't make a black hole out of cursed energy just because she could. Only she could do that. Anybody with cursed energy or output, same as Yuki, wouldn't be able to create a black hole because their body simply doesn't have the properties to create that technique, which means that you can't root any objective informations to argue that these guys are planetary in terms of AP just because of this one single outlier. Another argument suggests that characters should scale to their creation feats. This mainly talks about Jogo and Dagon's domains, placing them at mountain to island level of AP. This simply doesn't hold up considering that Jogo narratively is most definitely stronger than Dagon, who has a better creation feat than his. This kind of logic simply doesn't hold up for many flaws contained in the story. You also can't possibly argue that Gojo is universal in AP just because he somehow creates a universe. The point I'm trying to make here is that creation feats should not equate to direct attack potency. In any case, the third meta, which I feel like is the one that makes the most sense, is that characters like Gojo and Sukuna should be at least large town to small city level of attack potency. This obviously comes from scaling to Jogo's maximum meteors said to be able to hurt 15 finger Sukuna, which means that characters such as Yuji, Hakari, Yuta, Maki, and Kashimo are definitely below the large town level of physical strength. This could be substantiated by characters like Oraume and Ryo, who has small town to town level of energy outputs, blocked by Yuta, who is narratively portrayed to being on the same level as Maki, Hakari, and last battle Yuji, which ultimately means that the top tier should be a large town to small city level. The other special grades are small town to town level, with lower tier sorcerers being significantly weaker. Now things gets even more absurd when talking about speed in the Jujutsu Kaisen world. You see, if we choose to take author statements at face value and ignore calculations and other scientific interpretations, then the verse would clearly cap at Mach 3, with high tiers being slightly above. Calculations, on the other hand, indicates a different story. Hypersonic to hypersonic plus levels of speed are something granted to Sukuna via multiple questionable calcs such as blitzing Chozi's piercing blood. In fact, if you ask me, I feel like this should realistically be the level of speed of the high tier characters in the series, since to be frankly honest, the remaining two metas that would upscale the verse considerably are highly questionable and in times downright unreasonable. Many people often think that the Jujutsu Kaisen verse should at least be massively hypersonic plus for a very questionable panel of Hakari dodging lightning at some extent. Kashimo could have simply targeted Hakari's charm from the get-go, especially considering the fact that his lightning strokes are explained to being impossible to dodge. The other questionable feat, funny enough, also comes from Kashimo's electromagnetic waves that Sukuna was able to dodge, but I personally tend to agree with most people who thinks that this is aim dodging. He didn't really dodge a light speed attack, but merely dodged before it was activated. But regardless of these clear contradictions, and my stand regarding these arguments would still be including these matters in this video. Now, similar to Hunter x Hunter, this series fights are usually highly technical, with characters depending on their hacks, techniques, and proficiency in using cursed energy. Best example is Gocho's Infinity and Yuki's Black Hole. These two abilities grant the user solid grounds and chances even against characters who are physically stronger than them. You also have other tricky abilities very hard to counter against, like Boogie Woogie and Cursed Speech. Not to mention Domain Expansion that grants the user guaranteed hits against his opponents. Gojo's Domain allows him to overload his opponent's mind with limitless informations, rendering them incapable of doing anything. Hakari's Domain allows him to have infinite cursed energy via guaranteed jackpot, and Yuji's Domain that we assume it targets the soul since we do not have any explanations of how it works. And with all of this being said, can any sorcerer overcome the hero hunter? When talking about physical strength, you can say that Garou has the upper hand against any character in Jujutsu Kaisen. While Garou was fatigued, injured, and poisoned, he was still matching post G4 Genos and tanking his attacks. He was also withstanding heavy punishment from both Bang and Bomb, in which one of them later on stated that he was certainly not holding back. Base Silver Fang is by the very least mountain level in the strength department, and judging that they couldn't one-shot him even in his poisoned state, suggests that Garou would at the very least be city level in terms of attack potency. When tackling the speed department on the other hand, taking in consideration that someone like Atomic Samurai can casually cut at massively hypersonic plus speeds but still gets overwhelmed by Homeless Emperor's super dense carpet bombs that both Ion and Spring Mustachio are able to hold out against, then someone like Garou should be within the same general range of speed, if not even higher, as these two A-class heroes. This is obviously without accounting for the speed of light meta in One Punch Man, with also ignoring databook statements suggesting that Max and Genji are lightning timer characters. So strictly speaking, if it comes to physical confrontation, no techniques or abilities involved, human Garou cripples everybody in Jujutsu Kaisen. But it's not really that simple, since we mentioned prior that Jujutsu Kaisen is a verse heavily invested in techniques, hacks, and abilities. With that in mind, speaking purely of the non-special grade level sorcerers, let's say Garou first decided to attack the Zenin clan head-on, just like Maki did. We know that the only two characters that would stand a chance are Naobito and Naoya, strictly for possessing projection sorcery. However, Garou is literally the king of adaptability and reactive evolution. If he somehow by a miracle gets touched by Naobito or Naoya's palm, then Garou will just simply learn how to abide by the 24 frames per second rule. And if that ability is useless and they can't use it against him, the clan's fate is already decided. Same case with Todo's Boogie Woogie. If someone like Hanami managed to adapt to it mid-combat, then Garou would simply do the same but on a much higher frequency. Todo wouldn't be able to swap positions with Garou since that ability requires the object to at least have above a certain amount of cursed energy that Garou doesn't possess. And even if he can, as soon as he gets closer to Garou and engage with him in a close quarter fight, I don't think Garou would even need to use the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist. Inumaki on the other hand can use Cursed Speech on Garou, but since the latter is just physically stronger than anybody in the verse, Inumaki's energy would be depleted before he gets a chance to do anything. All of these informations function to convey that Garou would be able to hunt most of these low to mid-tier sorcerers. Now, when it comes to special grade sorcerers or characters who should narratively be on that level, it's very important to remember that Garou would be treated same as Maki and Toji, someone who'd be totally immune to domain expansions due to possessing zero cursed energy. You see, if you say that we should grant Garou cursed energy to create a fair fight by making him susceptible to domain expansions, then this would actually make things much more complicated. Think about it this way, Garou having cursed energy would just make him stronger in every field. His potential would allow him to be proficient in cursed energy, learn how to regenerate, and possibly develop a domain, and that would literally be the definition of unfair. By this logic, Garou would simply refuse to enter any domain expansion, which means that Higuruma wouldn't be able to put Garou on the stand, and And even if he does and Garou confesses of his crimes, there's no telling of which verdict he's going to get, since we've only seen one, which is deactivating the guilty's cursed energy, something that Garou doesn't possess. Hakari also can't get Garou inside his restless gambler domain, wouldn't be able to get the jackpot, no infinite curse energy or regen, and he'd be completely cooked. Even if he uses his domain against a third party prior to this fight like he did against Kashimo, Garou would still be able to overwhelm Hakari even in his jackpot state. And since he also doesn't have any answers to Yuji's unexplained domain alongside Gojo's unlimited void, they would be the key to take him down. But as I said, since these two domains have barriers, he would just refuse to enter the domain. However, to be completely fair, there exist a few abilities that would prove to be difficult for Garou to handle, with some having the potential to defeat him. Granted, we need to allow JJK characters to have massively hypersonic, two relativistic speeds to say they would not just be blitzed by Garou. With that in mind, it's safe to say there exist 3 abilities that Garou would struggle with and one that would certainly be too much for him to handle. Number 1 would be Megumi's 10 Shadows, specifically the Mahoraga ritual. If you account for the anime showcasing Mahoraga's ability to physically adapt to his opponents, with considering that Garou doesn't really have any destructive attacks to get rid of him before he activates his abilities, then this fight would just be a stalemate with both guys adapting to each other until Garou attains a strong destructive attack like Fajin that can destroy him completely. However, if we go by the manga standards where Mahoraga was never shown nor stated to have the ability to adapt physically, then Garou just destroys him. Number 2 would be Takaba's comedian ability. I genuinely don't think that Garou would be able to deal with this same way Kinjaku did. However, if you wanna argue that we've seen Garou adapting to unconventional abilities like telekinesis, so most likely he'd be able to override Takaba's reality manipulation, I personally think that that's a reach but still possible via reactive evolution. Number 3 would be Gojo's Infinity. Hero Hunter Garou, as far as I'm aware of, has no way nor technique to bypass this ability. It's a highly complex application that goes beyond just reflecting and memorizing your opponent's movements. Maybe Monster Garou would be able to bypass Infinity since this is the same character who almost broke a dimensional seal, but Hero Hunter Garou, I have no idea how he would be able to deal with Infinity. However, it's very important to understand that I'm not saying that Gojo defeats Garou, since he doesn't have any attack that can crack his durability. All I'm saying that Garou would not be able to hurt Gojo either, possibly ending this fight in a stalemate. Number 4 would be Yuki's Black Hole. This is certainly something that Garou doesn't have any chance against, a planetary attack he can deflect or adapt to. I would say that this is the only win condition these sorcerers have that guarantees the defeat of Hero Hunter Garou. Now, I deliberately avoided talking about Sukuna since I made a video about him going up against One Punch Man monsters that you should go and check out. So to sum up this video, Garou would be able to deal with every sorcerer with having only characters that can pose a challenge to him. Mahoraga if he can physically adapt, Takaba's comedian ability, Gojo's Infinity, and Yuki's Black Hole. Until next time, please take good care.